Back again on the bass. Oh yeah, here we go. I thought this was a good opportunity not only to kind of explain what I did on the arrangement for the Star Spangled Banner, which I believe is a bass line that I came up with last year, but also just the way that I come up with bass lines in general. And this could be something that's used not just on the bass itself, but it could actually be used if you happen to be watching this and you do a lot of programming where you're using a MIDI keyboard into FL Studio or GarageBand or Logic or Pro Tools or whatever other thing. The same principles apply. The really beautiful thing about the bass is that it does have a lot of important functionality to show where the time is, because you're feeling like the time. You're feeling the beat. You're feeling the tempo there, right? But it's also showing you the chord structure as we move along, so that makes it a really important instrument in that way as well. So the other thing, though, to keep in mind is that eventually, once you start getting used to where notes are on the bass, on the fretboard, it's really an opportunity to be able to grow and experiment with what you're going to be playing along to make what you're playing a bit more interesting. That's why I encourage everybody to learn their major scales, their minor scales, all the extra goody things like that, because that's going to help you develop more interesting bass lines that are and they're more interesting to listen to, and they're funner to play, frankly. So that's how I kind of came up with the bass line for the national anthem, which is in G. So I came up with this idea. It's really, really simple, where it's just basically I focus on the 1 and the 5 below the 1. So it's in the key of G. So I want to use the 5 below, but I can't do that because I'm on the 3rd fret here of the lowest string, because it's not a 5 string. A 5 string would have a lower string, but I think it's better to just focus on the 4 string for now anyway. So automatically I jump up to this G right here, because that's going to work a lot better for this arrangement. And maybe you can hit that lower G for a better accent later on in the tune. So hitting beat 1 is key, right? 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And I like using the 5th because it's still in the chord, but it automatically creates this pull back to the root of the chord. And then to D, same structure between D and A, and then back to G. Okay? And then there's the rest of it. I mean, it's really super simple. But from there, I want to expand on that, okay? The way that I think of it, the chord tones in a chord are the anchors that you need to focus on the bass. And the primary anchors automatically are, let's say we're still in the chord of G. So we'll go from the low G. The anchors really are, the primary anchors are 1, 5, and the octave. And then automatically the next in line is the 3rd. Once you add the 3rd, having the 1st, the 3rd, the 5th, and the octave, that's already going to give you so much to work with. Right? So that's, and even then, that's still really, really wide. But the other thing to point out is, besides just the use of the notes, I'm using a lot of rhythmic ideas. I'm not just playing which you can do in some contexts that works really well. So it's really a combination, and it's something that you're only going to develop with experience. I totally understand that a lot of students that I work with don't have as much experience as other students, and so maybe it's frustrating. But the best way that you can start learning about this stuff is just to start experimenting with it yourself and listening to recordings where you can just pick things up and figure them out. Even me, taking the time to learn bass a little bit more on my own, I've been listening to recordings, just, primarily stuff where the chords don't move around a ton, so that I can focus on actually finding the pitches and figuring out what those pitches are, but then also getting used to these different shapes that I'm playing with my hands. So I'm going to go back to this G up here because there's more room to play with the fifth below. So right there, I'm just making up whatever I want on the spot right now, just as examples of ways to come up with different little grooves that work, that are still within just one chord itself, before we start getting into the realm of, chord changes coming in and making you have to change positions and move around a lot. So it's even like just kind of focusing on it in a way that's almost like a kind of a focus on lo-fi, experimenting with lo-fi type feels, where the bass lines are incredibly important. In a lo-fi tune, just playing the root note is not really going to work very well, I mean, sometimes it might, and maybe a few of you will try to show me a recording of a lo-fi tune that works really well, where it's just focusing on the root of each note, or of each chord. But this is more from the perspective of trying to help you, give you some little tools to make this type of stuff a little bit more interesting. So what I was messing with before, so I'm just doing the half step below the root just to lead me back to the root from the fifth. I think that's what I played. So then I went up to the ninth, or the second pitch, so because automatically those are all really great tasty tones that you can use automatically. Up to the 5, back down to the 1. Another thing that I was experimenting with before I started recording this is that also the use of chromatics. There's so many cool little things that you can add with chromatics if you use the chord pitches, those anchor notes or chord tones, as goal notes. When I was studying jazz back in the day when I was in college, I was taught that you want to make chord tones, in a lot of contexts, it works really well to make chord tones goal tones, like you're heading for that goal. And that works really well on the bass if you use it from a chromatic perspective. That didn't work real well. So you see what I'm doing there? I'm just going to the 5, half step below the root, to the root, and then between the 3rd and the 5th, chromatic. Of course, I have to adjust the rhythm so that it fits in line, because I'm naturally doing like sort of, I'm not going to say beatbox, but I'm kind of like making weird like clicks in my mouth to kind of imply a beatbox kind of a thing. so that I end up back on the root, back on beat 1. Now I'm not saying that that's something that has to happen all the time. I'm just saying that in this context, it makes the most sense from the way that I'm thinking of it. So stuff like this is things that players that have a little bit more experience should really be focusing on, and just be mindful of just automatically when we're working within a chord structure to try to make something more interesting by focusing on the first, third, fifth octave, and also the fifth below. All right, check it out, work on it, don't be scared of it, experiment with it. I'm really excited to see what you can come up with, and get back to me, show me what you find out. All right, let me know if you have any questions. Take it easy, peace, see you next time.